Welcome, beautiful Sigma ladies. Some people attract attention, but Sigma females attract consequences. That's the quiet truth nobody wants to admit. A Sigma female can mind her business, keep her circle microscopic, and operate like a whispered rumor. Yet somehow, the very people she's trying to avoid will sprint toward her like she accidentally dropped free Wi-Fi. And here's the twist, backed by behavioral psychology. People chase what feels emotionally unavailable 94% more intensely than what's openly accessible. So while she's out here practicing peaceful avoidance, the world interprets it as a cosmic invitation. It's almost comical. She can cross the street to avoid someone, and that's exactly when they decide to finally open up. She can keep her energy locked up tighter than a bank vault, and someone will still try to break in with full confidence, no plan, and vibes only. But this isn't magic, and it's definitely not coincidence. Sigma females operate on a frequency that ignites curiosity, awakens egos, and exposes insecurities, all without saying a word. And this is exactly why the people she's actively avoiding become the ones who obsess over her the most. Quiet power creates loud reactions, especially from those she wants absolutely nothing to do with. Number 1. She moves like someone who has already chosen herself. A Sigma female has an unmistakable energy, the kind that doesn't beg for attention, approval, or validation. She has already done the hard work most people avoid. She has chosen herself. She knows her worth, her limits, and her non-negotiables, and that confidence isn't loud or showy. It's effortless. People feel it instantly. It's in the way she walks, the way she talks, and the way she carries her presence without needing anyone to confirm it. This isn't arrogance. It's self-containment, and it has a magnetic pull that others can't resist. The irony is that the very people she avoids, the ones she doesn't want to get close to, are drawn in like moths to a flame. Why? Because she represents something most people spend their entire lives chasing: self-approval, inner peace, and clarity of purpose. When someone who has never truly chosen themselves meets a Sigma female who already has, it triggers an unconscious desire to be part of that certainty. They want to borrow it, mimic it, or somehow latch onto it, thinking proximity can transfer the feeling, and the Sigma female isn't handing it out. She's not available for that kind of emotional freeloading, which only intensifies the chase. Her self-containment creates a mirror effect. People see themselves in contrast, their insecurities, their dependence on external validation, their lack of boundaries, and they don't like what they see. That tension is addictive. They chase because they want the feeling of choosing themselves, but they mistakenly think it can come from her rather than within themselves. Her calm refusal, her quiet independence, and her refusal to compromise her standards become irresistible precisely because it's what they can't achieve on their own. She isn't interested in impressing anyone, negotiating her worth, or bending to fit someone else's idea of her. And that's why she attracts the very people she's avoiding. Because she embodies the rarest form of power, the power of already being complete. Her presence forces others to confront their own emptiness, and that confrontation is too tempting for most to resist. Number 2, she has a psychological shadow. Others want to stand in a Sigma. Female carries a presence that's magnetic without being loud, commanding without being forceful, and mysterious without trying. She operates in a way that feels like she exists partly in her own world, a world that isn't easily accessible, isn't immediately understood, and certainly isn't designed for everyone to enter. And that's where her psychological shadow comes in. It's not darkness in the negative sense. It's the kind of aura that draws people toward her without her asking for it. It's a shadow of strength, self-possession, and calm intensity that people feel safe leaning into, even when she herself isn't offering them anything. The people she avoids sense it instinctively. They feel a gravitational pull toward her because her energy offers what most can't create: clarity, emotional stability, and an unspoken sense of protection. Standing in her shadow gives them a temporary refuge from their own chaos. It's subtle, almost hypnotic. Even if she's not speaking or engaging, her very presence communicates safety and authority. People don't consciously understand why they're drawn to her, but they know that being near her, even peripherally, shifts something inside them. It's dangerous in its simplicity because she doesn't curate it, she doesn't manipulate it, and she doesn't perform it. Her shadow exists naturally. People feel it, they crave it, and that craving becomes irresistible. They interpret her avoidance not as a boundary, but as a challenge, a test to see if they can be allowed into that rare space she inhabits. That's why she attracts those she wants nothing to do with. They sense a power they can't wield, a calm they can't manufacture, and a depth they can't touch. Her shadow becomes a magnet because it reflects everything they want but don't have, and it forces them to confront what they've been missing in their own lives. She doesn't invite them in, she doesn't encourage the attention, and yet they linger, drawn by an invisible pull she didn't even intend to create. That's the quiet, unsettling phenomenon of the Sigma female's shadow. It exists for herself, but it can't help affecting everyone else. It's both refuge and revelation, and that combination is impossible for most to resist. Number 3. She makes people confront the version of themselves. They're afraid of a Sigma. Female doesn't participate in drama, mind games, or emotional shortcuts. She doesn't tiptoe around insecurities, cater to fragile egos, or excuse laziness in others. Instead, she exists as a standard that is unbending and uncompromising, simply by being herself. That presence has a strange and often unsettling effect on the people around her, especially the ones she avoids. They see in her a reflection of what they refuse to acknowledge in themselves, the parts they hide, deny, or ignore. She doesn't point it out or lecture them. She doesn't even have to. Just being near her, observing her composure and self-possession, is enough to make people confront the version of themselves they fear most. Most people are addicted to distraction, chaos, or emotional shortcuts because it protects them from facing uncomfortable truths about their own behavior, habits, or mindset. A Sigma female doesn't provide that comfort. Her presence exposes their weaknesses simply by contrasting with her clarity. She doesn't criticize, she doesn't chase, she doesn't fix. But her refusal to meet people halfway in dysfunction becomes a mirror they can't look away from. And that mirror is frightening. That fear creates obsession. People chase her, not because they're drawn to her personally, but because they are desperate to escape the discomfort of seeing themselves honestly. They hope that if they can hold on to her, win her over, or break through her boundaries, they can somehow avoid the confrontation with their own flaws. They believe proximity to her can soothe the tension her presence ignites, but it never does. She is indifferent to their attempts because her goal is not to change them, and she certainly isn't responsible for their self-realization. The chase becomes a struggle against themselves rather than against her. They are drawn to her as if she is a safe container for their unresolved issues, but the irony is that she exposes the very truths they are running from. Her avoidance forces them into a reckoning they've been avoiding all their lives, and that is why she magnetically attracts the very people she is intentionally keeping at a distance. Number 4. Her non-reactivity feels like emotional vacuum to narcissistic personalities. A Sigma female's power often lies in what she doesn't do. She doesn't overreact, she doesn't bend to emotional manipulation, and she doesn't hand out validation like candy. To the average person, this might seem neutral or even boring. But to narcissistic, clingy, or emotionally dependent personalities, Her non-reactivity is like a vacuum that sucks away their sense of control. They feed off responses: anger, jealousy, guilt, fear, flattery, anything that confirms their power over others. When she refuses to provide it, their entire emotional ecosystem collapses. The very people she actively avoids are the ones most susceptible to this effect. They crave a reaction, an acknowledgement, a spark they can manipulate or interpret as submission. She offers none. Her calm, contained, and deliberate absence of emotional supply drives them insane. The more she disengages, the more their compulsion intensifies. They interpret her indifference not as a boundary, but as a challenge, a puzzle they must solve, a void they must fill. Her non-reactivity exposes their fragility. Every attempt they make to provoke, bait, or engage her fails, which paradoxically heightens their obsession. They become fixated on her because the vacuum she creates is so rare and so unyielding that it cannot be ignored. Other people will argue, overreact, or crumble under their tactics, but she remains impenetrable, untouched, and unmoved. In their eyes, she represents a power they cannot claim or replicate, the ability to remain unaffected in a world full of emotional noise. That absence of reaction becomes irresistible. They chase her not because she sought them out, or because there's any personal connection, but because her very detachment challenges their emotional survival instincts. Her calm refusal is a magnet for those who thrive on chaos, and the harder they push, the more they are drawn into the orbit she never intended to offer. Her strength is quiet, her influence invisible, and her avoidance lethal to those who require emotional prey. And that is exactly why the people she avoids are the ones most compelled to chase. Number 5. She exposes social parasites without calling them out. A Sigma female has an uncanny ability to see through people, the ones who take more than they give, who feed off attention, energy, or emotional labor. She recognizes them immediately, not with judgment, lectures, or overt confrontation, but with a quiet, deliberate disengagement. She doesn't participate in their games, doesn't validate their ego, and refuses to offer the energy they crave. And that's when the magic, or chaos, happens. For those social parasites, her silence is a shockwave. They are used to people bending, flattering, or bending over backward to keep them engaged. Her refusal to engage destabilizes them. It's not punishment, it's simply her maintaining her own space. But they interpret it as a challenge, a test of their importance. They scramble to prove themselves, to insert themselves back into her orbit, to show they are worth her attention. Her absence becomes a magnet because it threatens their identity as someone significant in someone else's world. The fascinating part is that she doesn't need to do anything active to create this effect. She doesn't call them out or expose their parasitic tendencies publicly. The exposure happens naturally. Their own desperation, their own frantic attempts to regain connection reveal exactly who they are. And she watches quietly, unaffected, knowing that their true character is revealed by their own actions. This creates a dynamic where those she avoids end up chasing harder, projecting qualities they wish they had, performing special acts, and trying to manipulate situations to appear indispensable. All of it is in vain because her disengagement isn't a strategy to trap them. It's simply her living her life without them. Her power is subtle, yet devastating. She exposes the truth of people's intentions while staying completely above the drama. In doing so, she protects herself and her energy, leaving the takers spinning, desperate, and undeniably revealed. She doesn't have to confront anyone to make them visible. Their own obsession does that for her. And in that way, her avoidance becomes a mirror, showing people exactly who they are without her ever lifting a finger. Number 6. She has a psychological gravity due to her self-containment. A Sigma female doesn't rely on anyone else to validate her existence. She carries her emotions, her standards, her dreams, and her inner peace entirely within herself. She doesn't outsource her happiness, her sense of purpose, or her stability. That self-containment is rare, and rarity always draws attention. People are unconsciously attracted to what they don't have, especially when it's embodied so effortlessly by someone else. Her psychological gravity isn't loud or performative. She doesn't command it with words or try to impress. It simply exists. People sense that she is whole, that her energy isn't scattered, and that she doesn't need anyone to complete her. That awareness triggers a response in others, especially those whose inner world is messy, dependent, or chaotic. They are drawn toward her, almost against their own rational understanding, because being near someone who is fully themselves feels magnetic. It's like her calm completeness highlights everything they lack, and that tension is addictive. Those she avoids feel this gravitational pull the most. They sense her stability and clarity, and it creates a subconscious urgency in them to be noticed or acknowledged. They chase her not necessarily for connection, but because they are instinctively attracted to her self-sufficiency. It's not about her. They are drawn to the energy she represents, the embodiment of everything they crave but cannot generate on their own. Her self-containment acts as both a shield and a magnet. It protects her from manipulation, emotional dependence, and unnecessary chaos, while simultaneously attracting those desperate for what they cannot claim. She doesn't bend, adjust, or try to control their attraction. It happens naturally because psychological gravity cannot be faked. Her world is complete, and that completeness pulls others into orbit, whether she wants them there or not. Being around a Sigma female feels like standing near a quiet storm of energy, contained, unstoppable, and mesmerizing. Her self-containment doesn't just define her, it defines how others perceive her, amplifying the intensity of the very people she chooses to avoid. Number 7. She's unintentionally healing to broken people. A Sigma female doesn't set out to fix anyone. She doesn't offer advice, play therapist, or try to solve problems for others. Yet, her presence has a quietly transformative effect on those who are emotionally unsettled or broken. There's something in the calmness she carries, the way she moves through life unbothered by petty chaos, that feels like medicine to people whose inner world is turbulent. They are drawn to her serenity without fully understanding why, mistaking her equilibrium for compassion, her neutrality for understanding, and her silence for intimacy. For someone who constantly seeks validation, attention, or guidance, encountering a Sigma female is disorienting. She doesn't fill their gaps or react to their chaos, but that very absence forces them to confront themselves. Her avoidance, her boundaries, and her quiet self-possession become a mirror they can't ignore. They see her calm, collected energy, and without realizing it, begin to crave the same stability for themselves. Her presence nudges them towards self-reflection and self-regulation, even if she never speaks a word. Broken people interpret her avoidance as a challenge, a test worth passing. They chase her because they hope to earn her approval, to be deemed worthy of her time or energy, and in the process, they encounter the parts of themselves they've been neglecting. Her effect is unintentional. She's not performing for anyone or shaping anyone's growth consciously. Yet her energy has a quiet, almost magnetic, therapeutic quality that unsettled souls find impossible to resist. It's ironic, she's unapproachable, distant, and self-contained, and yet, by existing in that way, she heals. Her calmness forces reflection, her boundaries force respect, and her neutrality forces honesty. She doesn't need to speak or act to create this impact. It happens simply because she is herself. That unintentional healing draws people toward her, even the ones she actively avoids, making her a force of quiet transformation without ever asking for recognition. Number 8. She has an aura that makes people fantasize, not observe. A Sigma female carries a presence that's elusive, subtle, and layered in a way most people can't fully decipher. She doesn't hand herself over for scrutiny or explain her every thought, feeling, or intention. That mystery creates an unusual phenomenon. People don't actually see her for who she is. They see the version of her they invent in their minds. Her energy is like a blank canvas. It invites projection. Strangers and acquaintances alike build entire storylines around her personality, motivations, and desires, filling the spaces she deliberately leaves empty. Her allure isn't rooted in charm or overt beauty. It's in the fact that she remains unknowable in meaningful ways. Humans crave narratives. They can't handle ambiguity. When they encounter her, their minds rush to construct a story that makes sense, a version of her they can possess mentally. And the more she avoids them or resists engagement, the more vivid and compelling those fantasies become. They chase her not for reality, but for the imagined version that exists entirely in their heads, a version tailored to their desires, fears, and aspirations. This dynamic is magnetic and often dangerous for those trying to get close. They aren't truly connecting with her. They're pursuing an idealized version that doesn't exist outside of their imagination. Meanwhile, she remains fully herself, unaffected by their projections. Her lack of explanation, her subtle signals, and her boundaries leave space for their minds to wander, and that wandering becomes obsession. The irony is that her distance and self-containment amplify the fantasy. The less she performs for attention, the more the imagined version grows in complexity and intensity. People chase what they've created, not what they've observed. And that is the silent power of a Sigma female. She doesn't need to do or say anything extraordinary. Her aura alone is enough to make people build entire worlds around her, worlds she never entered and likely never will. Number 9. She projects an energy that feels safe to confess to. A Sigma female carries an energy that's deceptively inviting. Even people she actively avoids feel drawn to her, compelled to share things they wouldn't reveal to anyone else. There's something about her presence that signals safety without demanding intimacy. She radiates neutrality and absence of judgment, which makes others instinctively lower their defenses. Strangers, acquaintances, even people she has no connection with often treat her like an emotional confessional, unloading fears, secrets, and vulnerabilities they don't dare share elsewhere. What makes this effect so powerful is the contrast between her detachment and their instinct to reveal. She doesn't chase attention, she doesn't perform empathy, and she doesn't manipulate or respond in predictable ways, and that very lack of reaction creates a vacuum that draws people in. They mistake her calmness and self-containment for understanding, interpreting her neutrality as a rare form of validation. She never promises comfort or connection, but somehow her presence alone encourages people to expose parts of themselves they've been hiding. The irony is striking. She avoids these people, keeps her distance, and maintains her boundaries, yet that very act of neutrality amplifies the pull. Her energy doesn't invite intimacy in the traditional sense. It simply allows others to project trust and vulnerability onto her. They feel safe because she doesn't compete for attention, doesn't judge, and doesn't push back. In essence, her energy becomes a mirror where they can reveal their raw selves without fear of consequence. It's a phenomenon she rarely exploits, and she usually isn't even aware of it. Yet the more she remains herself, calm, composed, and untethered to social expectation, the more people are drawn to share, confess, and chase her attention. Her self-containment and neutrality create a paradox. She avoids, but people gravitate toward her as if proximity could somehow secure the safety she embodies without her consent. It's a quiet, irresistible magnetism that leaves others exposed while she remains untouchable. Number 10. Her silence creates psychological echoes. People try to fill. A Sigma female doesn't feel the need to fill spaces with words, explanations, or justifications. Her silence isn't emptiness. It's intentional, self-contained, and reflective. Most people are addicted to noise, constant talking, over-explaining, or performing, because it shields them from confronting their own insecurities, flaws, and unresolved emotions. When she doesn't participate in that noise, it exposes what others spend their lives trying to hide. Her quiet acts like a mirror, revealing discomfort, dependency, or the chaotic chatter they usually ignore. Being around her forces people to face themselves. There's no distraction, no emotional crutch, no echo of validation to rely on. That absence of external stimulation creates a void they instinctively feel compelled to fill. People chase her because her silence awakens thoughts and feelings they usually suppress. They start noticing patterns in their own behavior, insecurities they've buried, and the ways they have been emotionally lazy or manipulative. Her quiet doesn't pressure them. It simply exists as a standard of presence they can't ignore. The psychological echo she creates is magnetic. The emptiness of her words, her refusal to perform, and her calm detachment leave people restless. They feel compelled to fill that space with their own energy, ideas, or attempts to engage her attention. Every unspoken moment becomes a canvas for their projections, insecurities, and desires. The chase isn't about her. It's about their own inability to tolerate silence and self-reflection. Her silence is not passive. It's a subtle, powerful force. It destabilizes those who thrive on noise and emotional reaction. It compels them to confront themselves in a way no conversation or explanation could. And that is why the very people she avoids are drawn to her most. They are unconsciously desperate to fill a space she will never fill for them, trying to occupy a psychological echo that exists because she refuses to compromise her presence or her peace. Number 11. She's too rare in a world addicted to predictability. A Sigma female doesn't follow scripts, conform to expectations, or perform predictable social patterns. She moves through life on her own terms, guided by her values, intuition, and self-contained rhythm. That unpredictability is magnetic because the world around her is built on repetition, routine, and conformity. Most people crave stability and predictability. They want social interactions to be safe, familiar, and easy to decode. When they encounter someone who doesn't fit that mold, it feels like a glitch, an anomaly that disrupts their expectations. Her rarity draws attention without effort. People sense that she operates outside the usual rules of interaction, and that difference is intoxicating. They are subconsciously intrigued by the possibility that she might rewrite the patterns they've become trapped in, the routines, compromises, and compromises they've normalized in their own lives. She doesn't need to act in dramatic ways or perform any kind of allure. Her unpredictability alone sparks fascination. Every gesture, decision, or boundary she sets is interpreted as a signal of something bigger, something worth understanding or even conquering. The people she avoids feel this pull the most. Her very detachment, her refusal to explain herself, and her refusal to follow social norms make them chase. They aren't drawn solely to her personality. They are drawn to the chance of glimpsing a life or energy outside their own predictable confines. Her presence challenges them, making them question their routines, their assumptions, and even their own desires. Her rarity isn't calculated. It's simply a byproduct of living authentically and self-sufficiently. And that authenticity is disarming in a world addicted to predictability. People are drawn toward her, not because she seeks attention, but because she represents a deviation from the monotony they've grown used to. She embodies a possibility they cannot ignore, and that magnetic disruption is precisely why the very people she avoids are irresistibly compelled to chase. Number 12. Her detached body language feels like a personal challenge. A Sigma female doesn't rely on exaggerated gestures, constant smiles, or artificial warmth to interact with others. Her body language is neutral, self-contained, and often deliberately detached. She doesn't lean in to please, overextend to impress, or perform energy that isn't hers. To most people, this might seem distant or even cold, but to those she avoids, it becomes irresistible. The lack of obvious signals or validation triggers a psychological response. The brain interprets her detachment as a puzzle to solve. When someone senses that no overt cues of approval or attention are being offered, it flips a switch. The unconscious thought becomes, if she isn't giving me attention freely, I have to earn it. Her boundaries, indifference, and refusal to participate in social theatrics are misread as a personal challenge. People project meaning onto her neutrality, assuming there's a hidden reward behind her distance. Her avoidance, rather than discouraging pursuit, intensifies it. The harder she holds her space, the more others feel compelled to cross it, believing that persistence will unlock access. This effect is amplified because her detachment isn't performative. It's authentic. She isn't trying to manipulate or seduce. She simply maintains her composure and prioritizes herself. That authenticity, combined with her refusal to cater to expectations, creates a magnetic tension. The people she avoids become obsessed not with her reality, but with the imagined reward that might lie behind the veil of her calm exterior. Her detached body language essentially turns human curiosity into pursuit. Every lean away, every measured pause, every lack of exaggerated warmth is interpreted as a gatekeeping signal, a barrier they are desperate to breach. In this way, her presence alone can generate fixation, obsession, and relentless pursuit, without her ever saying a word or actively participating. Her neutrality becomes the spark, and their chase is the flame. Conclusion. Sigma females operate on a frequency that most people simply cannot decode. Their power is quiet, their presence unassuming, and yet it commands attention in ways the world often misunderstands. They don't chase, they don't perform, and they certainly don't bend to meet the expectations of others. But paradoxically, it's this very independence, clarity, and self-containment that draws people toward them, even the ones they actively avoid. Every gesture, every pause, every unspoken boundary becomes a mirror, a challenge, or a puzzle that others cannot resist. They expose insecurities without judgment, highlight weaknesses without confrontation, and create magnetic tension simply by existing authentically. People chase them not because of what they say or do, but because they reveal what others lack, what others crave, and what others fear to confront within themselves. Their avoidance doesn't repel, it intensifies the pull. Their neutrality doesn't disengage, it ignites obsession. Every interaction, or lack thereof, becomes a psychological echo, bouncing back parts of ourselves we often refuse to see. Sigma females are rare, and that rarity amplifies their effect. In a world addicted to predictability, noise, and constant validation, their calm, self-contained presence acts like both a refuge and a challenge. They attract, they provoke, and they illuminate, all without trying, all without asking, and all without compromise. To be in the orbit of a Sigma female is to confront reality in its rawest, most uncomfortable, and most compelling form. It's no wonder that the very people they seek to avoid often find themselves irresistibly drawn to them. If you found these insights as fascinating as they are revealing, don't keep them to yourself. Subscribe to the channel to uncover more hidden truths about Sigma personalities. Hit the like button to show your support, and share this video with anyone who needs to understand the magnetic, unshakable presence of a Sigma female. And don't forget to comment below. Let us know which point hit hardest for you, or share your experiences with people who seem impossible to reach. This is just the beginning of exploring a world of extraordinary dynamics that most people never notice, and you won't want to miss what comes next.